Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first open board meeting of 2022. Thank you all for joining us virtually today. It's nice to have this opportunity to meet on this platform. At this point, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to start by saying that we acknowledge, respect, and celebrate the Indigenous nations on whose territories we are fortunate to live, work, operate, and serve. We recognize that in planning and managing the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. I'd like to start by welcoming, we have new members to the board, and I'd like to welcome them. Today is my first meeting back in the role as board chair, and I'm honored to be representing the board here today. I want to say how happy I am to be back working with this exceptional organization in this capacity once again. I'd also like to welcome our newest members, Jennifer Chan and Harpinder Sandhu, to their first meeting as part of this board. I look forward to serving on the board with you all in the year ahead. Now I'd like to move to our agenda. We have a lot of items to discuss today, and we'll begin with the public delegations. So we have 6 delegates that would like to speak today, and I'd like to invite the first delegate to speak, and his name is Abdul Sattar Muhammad. Abdul, are you here with us today?
Chair Cunningham, the public delegate hasn't joined, but so we could move on to the second delegate.
All right, so we'll go on to the second delegate, and then let me know if he joins. Joy Russell would be our next delegate.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome, Joy.
Okay, great. Welcome, thank you. Good morning, excuse me, good morning, board members. On March 11th, the PHO of BC ended mandatory masking in many places, including public transport, which I believe was a grave mistake. I, like many other people, rely on public transport. I don't drive and I don't own a car, and I've been happy to do so for many, many years and intend to continue doing so. But now that masking is optional, the use of public transport is a health risk for me. It is not a safe place to be. I am not alone in this risk. Everyone is at risk and no one is immune from exposure to COVID. For some of us, the consequences of exposure to COVID may be fatal and may even result in hospitalization or death. And even for those who are asymptomatic or have mild symptoms, medical studies show that COVID is a multi-system disease affecting multiple organs. We have yet to really understand what the long-term effects of having COVID are and what the impact will be on society as a whole. Masking is one proven and effective way that we know to keep the transmissions low of this virus. On the WHO website, it states, quote, masks should be used as part of a comprehensive strategy of measures to suppress transmission and save lives, unquote. Masking needs to be done collectively and en masse for it to be effective. If I mask up and you do not, I am at risk and you are more greatly protected. Given this, I would like us to seriously consider how we have gone from we're all in this together to it's a personal choice with regards to masking. Not everyone on the bus or train is fully vaccinated or vaccinated at all. There is no, there is no guarantee no passenger on the bus or train does not have COVID. Buses and trains are often crowded, the air quality can be poor, and with the numbers being drastically reduced for those who are getting PCR testing for COVID, we don't really know what the actual numbers are of those who have COVID. We need to protect each other. We know that a variety of people use TransLink services, and they include the most vulnerable of our society, low income, poor, the elderly, students, Black and Indigenous peoples, people with disabilities, the immunocompromised, those who live with or care for those who are vulnerable to COVID. They include people who don't have the luxury or means to drive a car to isolate themselves from the potential of harm. Getting the bus or train knowing everyone is masked means that you don't have to rearrange your schedule to find the least crowded time of day, to get to the pharmacy, to get your medication, to get to the grocery store, to get your food, just to be safe. It means you can get on anytime, relax, maybe look out the window and even dream. It means you don't have to isolate at home because you are immunocompromised and can safely visit that great friend that makes you smile and have a belly laugh. Getting on the bus when everyone is masked says, we're all in this together. Masks are mandatory on public transport in Saskatoon, in Alberta, in Quebec, in Ontario, and UBC is doing its own mandatory masking on campus. I urge TransLink to model leadership to provide a safe and essential public service by mandating the wearing of masks on all public transport, to enact leadership where care for one another is a top priority and no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy, for coming to speak to us today. Our next speaker is Lynn Philitrop. And
Hello.
Lynn, yes, can you hear us, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, and we can hear you. And I know you're here to speak about masks as well, so please, please start.
Are you here with us today? Chair Cunningham, the public delegate, hasn't joined, but so we could move on.
So, Lynn,
Yeah.
perhaps I could ask you to start speaking, but if you have a feed going on in the background with the
Yep.
meeting, could you turn the volume down? Because we're hearing that also, I think.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay, so please
Can I-
go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Lynn Filiatra. I'm a retired emergency physician and member of Protect Our Province, BC. We are a grassroots advocacy group working to help people in BC stay safe by sharing accurate information about COVID-19 pandemic and advocating for evidence-based policies. Our ultimate goal, like everybody else, is to end this pandemic. Let me acknowledge that I'm joining you from the Quaquot First Nation and the Coast Salish territories. Let me start first by asking a question. Why is smoking now allowed on buses and SkyTrains? Oh, wait, the cigarette smoking rules have not changed. Yet, you see, by lifting mask requirement during an ongoing pandemic, this board is effectively allowing people to smoke, except what is coming out of mouths is not cigarette smoke. It's a contagious virus that has already infected over 354,000 British Columbians, disabled countless others through long COVID, and so far has killed 2,975 loved ones. Despite our collective wish that this pandemic be over, COVID is not yet done with us. In BC, the BA2 subvariant now makes up more than 50% of new cases. It is 30% more contagious than Omicron. Let me repeat that. It is 30% more contagious and transmissible than Omicron. We can all see what is happening now in China, in many European countries, and in the United Kingdom. It is easy to predict what will soon be happening here. A sixth wave. SARS-CoV-2 spreads like cigarette smoke through the air that we share and breathe. Crowded buses and SkyTrains create the perfect conditions for spread. Now let's add to the mix a much more contagious subvariant, while at the same time we remove mask requirements on buses and SkyTrains. What exactly do we expect will happen here? My ask of this board is that you keep mask requirement in place for the safety of all, riders and your own employees. Masks work best when they are mandatory and they are worn by everyone in the shared space. I also ask that TransLink starts cleaning the air that riders share and often rebreathe. This can be accomplished by first measuring the air quality on buses and trains, and secondly, adding air filtration to your existing ventilation strategy. We should take our cue from high-performing countries such as Taiwan. They have already added HEPA filtration units on their buses and have kept mandatory masking on their public transit. By taking 3 actions, mandatory masking, monitoring air quality, and adding filtration to ventilation, TransLink will be moving closer to meeting its customer promise and live its value of operating safely at all times. Only when commuters feel safe will TransLink ridership recover. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you very much for coming and bringing that information to us. We really appreciate it. And now can I ask Daryl De La Cruz if he's here with us? Jennifer, do we have Daryl here?
Yes, he should have joined the meeting. Daryl, are you with us?
Hello, yes, I'm right here.
Hi. The floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. On Monday, March 7th, I had foreseen the changes to our COVID-19 protective measures and started a petition calling for mask requirements on public transit in BC to continue. 4 days later, our provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, stopped requiring masks in public places with no warning. In the few days before she did that, more than 1,500 people signed, a number that has now grown to over 2,000 people. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of every one of these people to say that we want masks to be required on the TransLink system. I represent regular people like you and me, but also people who have said that they are in a high-risk category or might have young kids that are still ineligible for a vaccine. I've heard from people who have said that they will stop using transit, but also from others who still have to ride transit, whether it's because they don't own cars or can't afford to drive anymore because of the spike in gas prices and are worried. There's only so much we can do to adjust our commute to avoid crowded times or even just avoid going out. There are no vaccination requirements and capacity restrictions on transit, so masks have been our only layer of protection, and now that has been removed. Public transit is an ideal place for contagious diseases to spread. This is recognized by our neighbors, Alberta and Washington State, and in Ontario and Quebec, where their health authorities have decided that masks are still required on public transit. Part of what they see is that a few people on board who are not wearing masks pose a real immediate threat to everyone else. And right now, it appears that the threat posed by Omicron variant COVID, especially BA2 variant, is enormous. This is a disease that spreads like wildfire. It's put many people in the hospital in places like the UK, South Korea, and Hong Kong. When the next variant comes along, it will spread before it's recognized. I don't want that day to come and for TransLink to end up in a position where it has to cut service or maybe even cut expansion plans because ridership recovery and fare revenue stalled or because many staff became sick. I strongly believe that a TransLink-led mask requirement, which Dr. Henry has said that you are free to do and that she would support it, would be a good decision. I say to someone, as someone who has advocated for transit and also for TransLink organization in the past, what I have seen is that most riders and many bus drivers and SkyTrain attendants are continuing to wear masks. We are the majority and your decisions should serve us. Please take my word for it because I have caught COVID once and my family members caught it from me. I do not want it again and I do not want them to have it again. I believe TransLink is a great organization doing great things and I really hope that your staff will make the right decision. Thank you.
Daryl, thank you very much for coming to see us. And I also appreciate Lynn and Joy. Rest assured that the board will be discussing this later today. And I think that our president and general manager from CMBC is listening very clearly to all your presentations. Our next speaker is Nathan Dedowich. He's here. And I think that our president and general manager from Nathan, are you here with us? Very clearly.
Hello?
Hello, Nathan. Can I ask you to turn?
Yes.
Can I ask you to turn down the volume of your computer in the
Okay.
background?
Yeah.
Thank you, so we can hear you speak.
Do you hear me now?
That's much better. Thank you, Nathan. So please go
Okay.
ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, board chair and members of the board. I would say that I support the previous 3 delegations. I did sign the petition to keep the mask on. But I'm here today to speak about an item on your agenda, which is the fare increase. I spoke last year about the fare increase. It's illegal by both the BC government and TransLink. No public consultation is required by the South Coast of BC Transportation Act. In 1986, now Councillor Jean Swanson and others took transit to the BC Supreme Court. The judge ruled that there was no proper consultation, but it is up to the BC Attorney General to pursue the matter of transit not abiding by its own act. Consultation in 2018 does not count for lack of consultation for the fare increase in 2022. Most cities in Canada and elsewhere are reducing or eliminating fares, not increasing them. Victoria is now providing free fares for all the refugees that are in the Capital Regional District. No other transit system in BC is increasing their fares. Do you know that there are 100 less bus drivers and up to 70 less buses on the road now compared to 2020? So transit fares are increasing, but less service is provided. Why not return the number 17 Oak bus back to Broadway instead of 12th Avenue? All you do is inconveniencing people from accessing the medical buildings on Broadway between Oak and Cambie Street. Your senior staff do not want to tell you the real truth. You lost 3 senior staff in 2021, and there are many vacancies advertised, and very few people want to work for TransLink. This fare increase would only generate around $3 million per year out of a $2 billion budget. It is a vicious circle of increasing fares, cutting service, and lower ridership per capita. It is called a transit debt spiral. See the Globe and Mail article on March 21st, 2022 about a new approach to financing public transit. Metro Vancouver is one of the few transit systems in Canada that do not offer low-income monthly pass, and the 3-zone fare system is unfair. The board and committees meet over 35 times per year, but do not release the non-confidential reports and minutes of those meetings. All we get are some incomplete reports 4 times a year. The board does not have an archive of all its meetings since TransLink started in 1999 in any of the public libraries. I have to keep asking for FOI requests for regular information that is easily available from other transit systems. All municipal councils have a proper archive methods. In closing, please contact the BC provincial government and ask for help to avoid increasing the fares. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for coming and speaking to us today. Our next speaker is Joe Kunzler. Joe, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you for
Welcome,
yes, I am.
Joe.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
It's an honor to speak before the TransLink board today. I am currently multitasking, so I'm going to be very acute today as your friend from the U.S. But I want to first congratulate Sarah Ross on being your vice president. This is a big deal. It's a big win for climate. It's a big win for moving people over cars. It's a big win for humanity, having a strong female voice at the table when it comes time to build the world's best transit, which is TransLink. And I'm a flag-waving American. But let me be very, very clear about this. The rest of the world, but especially my America, can sit down and get on, hopefully this June, the Amtrak Cascades and learn from you guys, because you're doing transit in such an integrated way, in an intelligent way, in a brave way, that we should have world peace soon, God willing, and just ship TransLink in a box to the rest of the world, and goodbye climate change. But it isn't the only reason why I wanted to reach out today. I am hearing some concerning reports that TransLink's financial picture is not so bright and clear and mild, but a bit stormy. And I want to be a friend in the room and say things like, we really badly need TransLink to be properly funded and supported by the federal and provincial governments as well as locally. Because you have the best ideas. You have elevated SkyTrain. You have a fare system and fare gates that work. You have, bus lanes. You have Rapid Ride, which is working out so well. And you really have an integrated system that works. And I would hope that the board now would really urge tourism agencies and bodies in Metro Vancouver to push riding TransLink as a tourist attraction in of itself, because quite frankly, there is nothing as amazing as getting on one of those automated Mark IIIs or hopefully soon Mark IV badass Boeing trains and just zipping along to, a shopping center, or transferring to a bus to go to Stanley Park, or getting on the C-Bus to meet the best of Malay in the game and Bo and Ma, just really seeing what quality transit can do to give people mobility at an accessible price point. That's just eye-popping amazing. I mean, I even have a Jada Stevens map on my northern ceiling overlooking north, just to keep you guys in mind. So I will conclude with this thought, hoping that you guys are able to stay strong and cheer all of you on. And just want to give you my full support. Thanks for having me today.
Joe, thank you very much for coming again today. And I just want to say to all the speakers, because that concludes our last speaker, that we really appreciate the time that you take in preparing for your words that you come and share with the board today. And rest assured that the board takes all of this feedback very seriously. And we will be discussing many of these items during our agenda today. So I'm going to ask Kevin Quinn, our CEO, to move to the next item on our agenda and make his report. So Kevin, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Chair. And good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here with you all virtually today. Before I get started, I just want to note that earlier this month, I really had the pleasure of visiting employees, really both on the front lines and behind the scenes, to celebrate Transit Operator and Worker Appreciation Day. And we have over 8,000 employees across the enterprise, and we know so well that our people are at the foundation of what we do, and our region simply could not move without their efforts and their commitment, particularly over the past couple of years. And these are the employees who go that extra mile for our customers to ensure that every experience is really the best that it can be. And so over the past few weeks, I've really had the opportunity to hear customer stories and feedback about employees who have gone above and beyond. And so I hope that if you have the chance over the coming weeks, you will really join me in thanking a transit worker that has helped you on your journey. Next slide, please. So I've really been eagerly awaiting our next update, which is really to share with you and to celebrate that customers are coming back to transit as our region is opening back up. And with some of the loosening restrictions we're seeing, the rising gas prices, we did see a bump in ridership this month. There were strong numbers across the board with really more customers choosing transit every day. So last week's ridership was at 64.4% of pre-COVID boardings. That's up 4.4 percentage points since we last spoke. And what that means is over 285,000 people are chose to take transit in Metro Vancouver daily. Now, these are the numbers from the first week of K-12 spring break, which does usually have slightly lower ridership. But I want to note that the week before spring break, we saw 68% of pre-COVID boardings with around 307,000 people choosing transit daily. And we do expect ridership to bump up again right after the break. As you all know, on March 11th, the province lifted the mandatory mask policy for indoor public spaces, including on public transit. And while masks will no longer be mandatory on conventional public transit, customers and employees are always welcome to wear a mask based on their personal comfort level. And I think, as we have heard today, we really recognize that not everyone will be comfortable with this decision. And so we're really encouraging our customers to respect each other's choice in whether or not to wear a mask. At this time, we are maintaining the mandatory mask requirement for customers and employees on HandyDart. This decision was in response to the provincial health officer's requirement to maintain the mask order in medical settings. And given that many of our customers are using HandyDart traveling to and from medical appointments, we felt this was an appropriate course of action for the time being. We're going to be consulting with our HandyDart customers and stakeholders and working with the provincial health office in the future to identify when the appropriate time might be to lift this requirement. Next slide, please. One way we've incentivized customers to choose transit was through our first ever Tap In to Win sweepstakes program. And at the start of the program, we set a target to register 20,000 subscribers. And after a 5-month campaign, we've actually tripled our goal with over 62,000 subscribers. So to close out this successful campaign, we are announcing the grand prize winner next month for a $10,000 travel voucher flying out of YVR. And as COVID travel restrictions continue to ease, there's even more reasons for customers to keep tapping. We know that our work is far from being done, and we're going to continue to look for new ways to bring riders back and really attract new riders to the system. Next slide, please. As always, we're planning for the future of the region and continuously looking for new ways to improve the customer experience. And so we're happy to announce testing of the next generation of battery electric buses that began in February. And so while we're awaiting 15 battery electric buses on order, we're running tests on a new demo bus provided by Nova Bus. This is a newer model than the ones that we currently have in service, and it should be able to travel 3 times as long on a single charge. So we're testing it for its distance on a charge, its charging capabilities, and sort of overall operability. Another great announcement was launching Kid Commute, a walking school bus program that brings students together to walk to school under the supervision of designated leaders. And this pilot came from a partnership with 8 schools, the City of Vancouver, the City of North Vancouver, and the Dedicated Action for School Health organization. And over 2,000 walking trips have been logged with the program. So from November until February, that equates up to 750 kilograms in GHG emissions saved. So pretty cool. In our capital projects program in early March, we notified our customers and regional stakeholders that major upgrades to the Brentwood Town Center SkyTrain station will begin in April and are expected to be completed in 2024. Brentwood Station is one of the busiest stations on the Millennium Line, and these changes will help accessibility and customer flow in and around the station. Substantial upgrades will really vastly improve customer access on the south side of Lougheed Highway, especially for wheelchairs, mobility aids, and strollers, thanks to a new elevator. So I do want to thank our customers and our neighbors in the area for their patience while we upgrade the station. Next slide, please. On April 22nd, we're going to be launching our first ever Earth Day region-wide campaign called Transit for the Planet, calling on all Metro Vancouverites to take transit. We're asking our customers to leave the car behind and take the bus, West Coast Express, SkyTrain, or C-Bus, knowing that every person's individual choice can really make a difference in the fight against climate change. Public transportation is key to tackling the climate emergency. So we'll be connecting with our regional stakeholders to get our message out and reach customers, old and new, to take action on Earth Day. And our goal here is really to create awareness of the connection between public transit and climate change. We know that taking public transit is one of the most effective ways that people can reduce their environmental footprint. Next slide, please. I do want to transition now and speak about our financial position. So currently our transit fare and program revenue are sitting at 9.3% below budget for the month of February. And ridership is at 6.2% lower than budget, which is actually markedly better than where we were sitting in January. In February, the federal government announced $750 million in nationwide funding to tackle public transit operating shortfalls, with the provinces and territories expected to match these funds. We're continuing to work with the province to understand what this funding will mean for TransLink. Right now, our biggest priorities are maintaining transit service levels as we continue to recover from COVID-related lost revenue. We're also currently working with you and with the mayors to plan and engage the public to help identify our priorities for the next 10 years of investments to move forward Transport 2050, our new regional transportation strategy. So we'll have more information to share next month regarding engagement opportunities. Next slide, please. This month, we celebrated International Women's Day, a day to champion action for gender parity and to celebrate the women in our lives, the women that we're so honored to call mentors, family, friends, and coworkers. And so I do want to conclude today by taking a moment to acknowledge the amazing women we have the privilege to work with on the front lines and behind the scenes. Women across the enterprise deserve to be recognized and celebrated. That concludes my remarks. I want to thank you all for your time today, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for that. Board members, are there any questions that you have for Kevin in regards to his report? Okay, so seeing none, you were just so precise, Kevin. Everything's great. So we'll move on and invite Michel Ladrec to come and give us a presentation on BC Transit and what's going on in his organization. Thank you, Michel.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, members of the board. It is always a pleasure to be here. Next slide, please. So this is our standard agenda, and it must be very familiar to you all. And I will also talk a little bit about Brentwood Station and some other fun bits that happened in the last quarter or so. Next slide, please. Now, firstly, a little bit about our priorities at BCRTC. I fundamentally believe that it is my role to help people succeed, right, and help them accomplish things. And we've been building on what we've been doing in the past 3 years and basically extended that. And what you see is that it always starts with leadership. Leadership for me is a key part to help engage people. And this is a challenging environment. So making sure that people feel supported, that they've got a fair deal, that they can come to work, which is a safe place and psychologically safe place where they can be the best they can be, is important to me, right? And that's where it all starts. That's how we move forward as BCRTC. Now, secondly, for me, it's about resourcing for success. We all know that it's a very challenging labor market at this moment, and we need top talent to achieve and maintain what we've already achieved. And that's our ongoing concern to us, but also something we're confident we will achieve and that we will still attract the best possible people. It's also about making sure that our processes are always optimized, right? And that we don't waste any resources, that we give the taxpayer good value for money. And that's my second, particularly under circumstances where we're still hoping to get our ridership back. So that's a second one. And our third is strengthen our program management. As you know, we have 16 large projects going on, and that's a complex situation. And we as BCRTC always need to be on top of things. So making sure that we're set up to succeed in future means that we have to pay constant attention to everything we need to deliver from 2026 and onwards, which would be major improvements to the transit system within Vancouver. So 3 key priorities, not that different from 2021, but with extra focus and just a kind reminder. Next slide, please. Now, we always talk about safety, right? And actually, we did rather well. So our lost time injury target has always been 4.5, and we reached 4.5 in the fourth quarter. But if you look over the entire year, it actually was 3.73. So we did a lot better. It's also the best we have done since 2016. So we see a ongoing improvement since 2016. And I'm proud of that, right? We've started a program called Safe Start. Safe Start is a well-known program that's been rolled out across many, many businesses. And it's a human factors approach that really makes people aware of their behaviors and how their consciousness of situations can help keep people safe. A very good example of what we've achieved is the Guideway department. You see them in the background. It's the people who are always out there when something happens to our Guideway and things that need to be fixed. It's a risky environment. It's people being out in the track, exposed to the elements. And to give you an example, in 2019, I'm not proud of it, but it was probably just before I arrived. They had about 17 LTIs, and this year they had improved it to 4.3, which is actually below our target of 4.5. So that's a tremendous achievement, showing that it's paying off. The next slide, please. Now, the positive news about this on one particular slide is what you see is that we still achieved our annual target of 96.5% within 3 minutes. And remember, we have a headway of 90 seconds. So every 1.5 minutes, there's another train. And we delivered kind of 99% service reliability and 96.5% punctuality within 3 minutes. And I think that's a tremendous success. What you also see is that we're suffering more from the weather, because in June and July, we had a heat dome with all kinds of consequences. And in November and December, we had snow and heavy rain. I think they called it atmospheric rivers. And what you see is that our system, although still fairly robust, if you look at the numbers of 95%, not quite what we wanted. And you see that those will probably be our future challenges. And we're looking into it constantly to see how we can improve. What we also noticed was an uptick in the number of delays over 30 minutes. And there's all kinds of reasons for those delays. And we're not, and we realize very, very much that those 30-minute delays are the worst for our passengers. They don't happen often, but when they do happen, they have a big impact. And sometimes we can avoid them ourselves, and it's within our control, like a failing switch machine, which we had 2 times. But there's also a number of external accidents that always affect us. And I'm talking about trespasses, police incident, medical emergencies, train human contact, and what have you. So these are things that are slightly outside of our control, and our focus will always be on limiting the impact, making sure that we get it below the 30 minutes, that we have a quick response to those kind of situations, and restoring the service as good as we can. Next slide, please. So this was interesting, right? And we all see that we featured in Mass Transit with SkyTrain. It's a really good article. It's technical, but very readable, so I recommend it. And it shows how a SkyTrain is moving from reactive maintenance to preventative maintenance. And also part of this article is how we deal with noise complaints. If you look at the past couple of months, noise complaints are probably leading our complaints board, right? And I can tell you that we do everything within our means to make sure that noise complaints are being reduced as quickly as possible. So what do we do? Well, for instance, we do regular inspections. and when there is a complaint, we go out there immediately to assess the situation and see what could potentially be the cause of those noise complaints. As always, in April, we will have a heavy lorem grinder, like last year, to make sure that the rails is in the best possible condition, and that we don't get these whistling tones that you would normally hear when the train passes, right? We also have a noise limitation program, which comes with putting in dampers and replacing steel for extra hard steel, putting in friction modifiers, so it's easier, right? And also do some more rail grinding. So that's all going on, and that gives you some really decent results. For instance, replacing switches can often lead to a 10 decibel reduction, and rail dampers can lead to a 6 decibel reduction. And we've also included that in most of our maintenance practices. And what we will see is that this year we will also put in extra dampers in those areas where we feel that noise is a concern. But the key part is that as soon as we get a complaint, we're onto it, we're going and inspect, and we'll make sure that we do the best within our means to resolve it. Next slide, please. And I already said a little bit about our capital and major projects program, right? And this is for the audience, we have 16 major projects going on at the same time. And TransLink is investing $2.5 billion, right? Out of a program that's, I think, close to $10 billion. So it's a big program, highly complex, lots of moving parts, and on top of our agenda to get it right. And what you see here in the picture is how we are improving our operations and maintenance center in Burnaby, so that it can accommodate 5-car trains. What you also see just outside of this picture is the start of building operations control center number 2. We've put in the retaining wall and we've got all our permits in place to start building. We also start building an OMC4, and we're working our way through the detailed design, and we're making good progress to make sure that once the trains arrive and we're expanding our service, that we have an extra maintenance facility to accommodate all that work. In the meantime, these are the big projects. We also still have our ongoing state of good repair projects, like replacing elevators and escalators and doing maintenance on those. And that's an ongoing program. And the audience will see that, the public will see that happening throughout this year. And then finally, we've started and implemented successfully asset management for the first part of all our assets. This was a McNeil recommendation. I think it was first suggested in 2009, and we're now in 2022, and I can finally say that we've succeeded in the first phase of implementing EAM. And what it will do, asset management, is to understand our assets, what the state of our assets is, to predict what might happen in future, and to make sure that we continue our journey towards preventative maintenance, right, and make a smoother and more comfortable ride for our passengers. Next slide, please. It was mentioned before, but Brentwood Station is about to be upgraded. Brentwood Station is the first a large station on the Millennium Line that will get this upgrade. It was built in 2002. It will take about 2 years to get it done, but overall what it will do, it will improve safety at Brentwood Station, it will improve accessibility, and hopefully also comfort to our passengers, right? It's a busy station. Brentwood has about 6,000 passengers a day, and with how Vancouver is growing, that will only increase hopefully in the next few years, right? So this is a real improvement. It's the start of an ongoing cycle of building extensions and maintaining them. This is a great example about how we keep the railway system attractive to our passengers. Next slide, please. And this is a stripped locomotive from the West Coast Express. Currently, we have 2 locomotives out in America to be completely refurbished. We're taking advantage of a low ridership at West Coast Express to do this. It's a big investment. It's about $21 million investment. It should all be finished by April 2026, so that we can continue to offer a reliable service for our West Coast Express passengers. Next slide, please. And this is a little bit of fun news. This happened 40 years ago on the 1st of March, and this is when we started breaking ground for SkyTrain. And to be honest, this first relatively small part of the network was mainly meant as an experiment and to tell contractors and let them experience how to actually build SkyTrain, providing them with critical information for construction and the way to move forward. Currently, we have more than 80 kilometers of SkyTrain, and there's more yet to become with potentially service lengthy SkyTrain and the Broadway subway project. But this was the very start. It was exciting at the time, and since then we have much improved, and we can all be proud of what we've achieved in the last 40 years. And that was the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you very much. I really appreciate your words on the focus on safety. I think that it's really enhanced by all the emphasis that you're doing with the just culture. So I really appreciate that. So I see that Andy Ross has a question for you. So I'll turn the floor over to Andy.
Great, and thanks for the report, Michelle. I'm very interested in the comments you made around the noise reduction program, which we're all very well aware of. I'm just interested in, with the grinding and the replacement of the switches and dampening, are we seeing reductions in the actual number of noise complaints coming in? Are we seeing a shift geographically of where they're occurring?
What we see is it comes in waves. So what we see is that once we've done it, we see a strong reduction. And then towards like this period of time when the weather clears and people are opening their windows again, and when we're contracting our lawn and grinder again once a year, we see that the number of complaints is increasing. I can't generally say that it's an overall increase, but we see that it comes in waves. What I can say is that we regularly get compliments from the public about how fast we respond. So although we do get complaints about noise, we get as many compliments as well, saying, well, we were actually quite surprised that when we did file the complaint, you responded so quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Dhaliwal.
Thanks, Lorraine. Michelle, my question is just sort of a follow-up to Andy's around noise complaint. You said we follow up with the public. What is the actual follow-up process? So when a complaint is received, do we go back to the complainant and close the communication loop with them as well?
I believe that is the case. So what happens if somebody files a complaint? It almost goes immediately. It goes via translink. It then almost immediately goes to our guideway department. They look if we know about the actual situation, and what or if we don't know about the situation, or if it's a new complaint, then we go out there probably within a day to do measurements and assess if the where the complaint could come from. Once that's been done, we will write a very short brief that will inform TransLink again about what we will be doing and what to expect. Normally it takes about 2 weeks to get everything done, and before people start to experience noise reductions. And I do believe that TransLink then passes that information on to the person who filed the complaint.
Right, Chair, if I may do a follow-up as well.
Sure.
I just around your first bullet point in your presentation, Michelle, the just culture and accountable leadership. Yeah. I just want to share my kudos with that, and give you an opportunity to maybe share an example out of that program of what's working and what changes are seen as a result of that.
Well, just culture is basically about creating a fair deal for everyone, right? Not just my people, but also their leaders and our customers. So it's try to find a balanced approach, but it's also a safety approach. And the key thing is that people make mistakes. And the question always is this a deliberate mistake, or has this been a proper human error? And what we used to do, or what people used to do, is when people made errors, they would be penalized for it. Because regulation policies are always very focused on, well, thou shalt not do something, right? And what this has changed is that that I've started the conversation. So firstly, build strong relationships with your team so that you know the personality, you know that when they made an error, it was a genuine error. And then when they made that error, rather than penalize, coach them or put systems in place that avoids that a similar error can happen again. And that is throughout the organization, right? I don't have an immediate example, but that's basically the approach that we follow with people. Also, when another example is when sometimes people are just anxious or frustrated, right? And then you fall out or you have a bad day, and that could create an atmosphere where the situation is very tense. But by building those relationships and having that just culture and accepting that people sometimes have a bad day, means that you eventually reach out as a leader and say, well, Dr. Harch, what's happening, right? What happened at home? And by doing it, you get a more open culture where people are more honest about the fact when they make an error, right? Because they know that if they're honest about making an error, we will actually try and solve it rather than penalize them, which overall helps our aim to improve safety overall.
Okay, thank you very much. Karen Horcher, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Michelle, for your report. I really appreciate the focus on safety and systems, but also the people, looking at how people are operating and how people are working and functioning to try and improve things. I really appreciate that. I was really pleased to also see the reduction in lost time injuries. My question is around the escalator replacements, and I know that your report refers to them as heavier duty and hopefully longer lasting. I'm just wondering about the escalators themselves. Are the new ones more componentized, and so does that make them easier to swap out components in the future, or do they become more difficult to swap out in the future? I'm just wondering if you could give me a bit of a sense of that. And then I also have a question about the original Mark I train cars and whether there's any plan to have one or two of them, saved for historical purposes with a museum or something like that.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Firstly, about the escalators, I don't know if it's easier to swap them out because an escalator is an escalator and they're always in positions where there's a lot of traffic going on and it's kind of a confined space. What I do know that these new escalators, the escalators that we're replacing are often already 36 years old, like the ones in Burrard Station, for instance, and the one that we had in Grenfell. Very, very old, heavily used, and they require a lot of maintenance, and often the components are not available anymore or very hard to get. So what we saw in the past is that those escalators could be out for like 4 weeks because the components just weren't available. What we see with those new escalators is that they're EPTA compliant, so they actually meet the standards that EPTA has set for escalators in public transport, in transit. That already helps. We also know that they come with a service contract of the supplier, so which assumes that it will be easy that if they fail to repair them, right? They're newer, so components generally would be better available. And also they come with extra safety features. For instance, if people stumble or fall, then the elevator will stop. So overall, it's a better and more robust elevator, but replacing them is still a big task, right? It's not that easy. Although we can always replace components. Regarding the Mark I's, yes, I think we're happy to provide one of the Mark I's to a museum or everybody. Well, I wouldn't say anybody who likes to have one, but yes, we're definitely thinking about it. We can already see that some of those Mark I's are very close to end of life, and or it will be very unlikely that we will bring them back into service because they're really in a poor state. And that option is always open, and I'm sure that together with Translink we can find ways to donate those in some way or another.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it would be nice to preserve some of that history of the region. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Karen. And we're going to move to Jen next.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your presentation. I want to echo the appreciation expressed by others on your focus on safety for passengers and for staff. And I really appreciate that so much care is put onto that and that you're seeing dividends on that work. One of the questions that I have is related to safety. It's on page 7 in the KPI table that was provided to the board. And unfortunately, it seemed to show a small uptick in the number of physical assaults per 200,000 hours worked in Q4 relative to the same period last year. And with the focus on safety, I'm sure this is something that you're thinking about. And I wondered if you might share with us some of the measures that you are taking in regards to that area. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you too for the question. Physical assaults, it's always a relative number. So what you see is with lower passenger numbers, the KPI might go up because we always compare it to other years when we had a lot more passengers, right? So that changes the statistics a little bit. It's a concern. It also is unpredictable. What we see is that we had one really bad assault last year, which was completely unpredictable. And what we have done in that case is talk to the team and put in extra measures to prevent that such a situation will happen again. Having said that, we do train our STAs at an ongoing basis to de-escalate situations and to use their verbal skills to de-escalate situations, right? And that's an ongoing process. We receive great support from the transit police, but that might sometimes be a little bit later than we would like, because transport police always has to are rarely at the station when something happens, right? But we also notice that we are very we quickly list something as an assault, and I think that's the right thing to do, right? So a physical assault includes swearing at an STA, for instance. When people bump into an STA, we also list it as a physical assault. So I don't want to say that these are not serious incidents, but let's say they come in variants, right? And some are more severe than others. But we're very keen to list everything that we hear of, just to make sure that we keep that focus on our STAs and their safety.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And I think that concludes the questions that we have for you today. I just want to say I recognize you have a lot of projects on the go, and I know you've got a lot of balls in the air, so we appreciate all the work and focus that you've been putting into the organization.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So thank you. So we're going to move now to item 5 on our agenda, which is our Coast Mountain Bus Company report. And I'm going to invite Mike McDaniel to come and tell us what's going on in the bus company. So Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham and members of the board. Happy to be here once again for this public board meeting. Next slide, please. So you see our agenda there. I'm going to start talking about our people, and I'm going to end talking about our people. We'll have some updates in the middle, and I will move right along. Next slide, please. So Kevin mentioned this already, but March 18th was Transit Operator and Worker Appreciation Day. Every year we celebrate this industry-wide, and it's a day for us to show our appreciation for all of the amazing people that we have at our organization. And along with other leaders and other staff, we were all out on the system throughout the day on Friday, and just connecting with our employees, passing along our thanks and appreciation. What was great was to see so many customers do the exact same thing. You always hear a nice thank you as people are alighting the bus at each stop. We really do have an awesome team at Coast Mountain Bus Company, and it was great to see so many of them on Friday. I look forward to seeing them out in the system as we get out there. Next slide, please. So over to service, and this is the service that our great team operates every day. And the chart you see in front of you is service hours delivered as a percentage of scheduled hours. And what you're seeing here is that we're continuing to deliver a very high amount of service throughout 2021, and actually higher than the majority of our transit peers in North America. So, excuse me, from June to December, consistently above 97%, with the exception of December, which we were hit with a few days actually of snowfalls, particularly at the end of December. But despite all of the many challenges that we've had, and we have had many throughout 2021, we've kept this region moving. And one of the ways to do that is obviously keeping service on the road. So kudos to our team for that. And next slide, please. So here, just to mention Handy Dart service, we have had increases as well in that area on trips delivered. By the end of last year, we delivered 49% of trips that were planned, with 77% of budgeted service hours. This, of course, was to keep distancing as much as we could on the vehicles. And we obviously saw an increase from 2020 in 2021 of trips delivered by taxi, up to 7% now. Also, just to note, mentioned before, the age-based discounts in Handy Dart as well as the Compass implementation went into effect in October of 2021. And at the end of 2021, approximately 23% of clients had signed up, but during the month of December, 73% of those trips were paid for by Compass. It just demonstrates that there are some very heavy users of that particular paratransit system, and they are adopting Compass very well. And more to continue on the new application process, which will be coming in future years. Next slide, please. So this is quite an exciting project that we started just a few weeks back. This is the installation of the braille and tactile signage on every single bus stop. These signs are incredibly important for our customers that are either blind or partially sighted. And once fully installed, we'll be the first transit agency in Canada to have braille and tactile signage on our entire system. The signs include bus stop ID number, bay number, routes serving that stop, of course, and then a contact number for customer information if they need further assistance. Like I said, 8,400 bus stops. The target is the end of this year that they will all be installed. And as of just last week, we had just over 800 signs already installed. I saw many of them out on the system at last Friday when we were all out. Next slide, please. So Kevin mentioned this a little bit earlier. This is the picture that you see on your screen is the demo bus from Nova. And we will get our lead bus, which will be actually our bus, in mid 2022, and then the remaining 14 to make 15 in mid 2023. These will complete the 100 route, and we will have 19 battery electric buses on that route, fully electrified. And we're very excited about that. We're seeing really good performance in the demo bus and testing, primarily cold weather testing, and that is going well. That bus will go back, of course, to Nova once we are done doing that, and we will welcome our buses very soon. Next slide, please. So this is a really neat innovation story that's coming out of once again out of our engineering group in our maintenance team. So in 2021, unfortunately, two reportable diesel spills happened. It occurred when debris hit the plastic filter underneath the double-decker buses. The spill was released a large amount of fuel onto the roadway. First, I want to say that these two spills, along with all the other spills, were cleaned up as per what our requirements are. We get on these very quickly, and we did everything we could to do that. But the goal here, of course, is prevention. We looked immediately to correct the issue. So after looking at a number of different prototypes, our engineers settled on a metal bracket. You see that on the right-hand side picture. We manufactured it in-house, and we have now fitted it onto all of our double-deckers, our 32 that we have right now. They will come on the 25 new double deckers that are shortly arriving. And of course, the metal bracket protects the plastic fuel filter. Alexander Dennis, who is the manufacturer of the double deckers, has actually incorporated our design onto all of their double decker buses, including the ones that are going out to BC Transit very soon as well. So kudos to our engineering team for this innovation, and I'm sure they will have the next innovation idea very soon. Next slide, please. And just an update here on our important work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. Two areas I wanted to talk about today. So first, on our transit operators, for all of our staff, we do want to make sure that our workforce more closely resembles the communities and customers that we serve. One of those areas, of course, is women in transit operator positions. So in our initiative so far, we've had focus groups that we've held with our female operators that work for us today, gaining insights on their thoughts and feelings and experiences so far working for Coast Mountain Bus Company. We're conducting a review of our recruitment process, and we, of course, just launched our female-focused recruitment campaign in February. On the trades side, we're doing very similar work here as well. We have upcoming meetings with BC Women in Trades. Our maintenance managers recently completed a workshop to develop effective strategies for speaking out against gender-based violence, as well as how to become allies. A lot more to come in future reports on this important initiative, but I did want to give the board an update today on how we're progressing. Next slide, please. And now it may seem a little bit late to be talking about holiday cheer, but given the timing of these meetings, I'm going to force it into the March meeting here. So looking back to December, we were very proud to have Mr. and Mrs. Claus, both transit operators, and Sparky the Elf, a operator training instructor, lead our Toys for Tots campaign. This program is now, of course, started at Surrey Transit Center, but is now across our entire system. Began in 1985, and almost 90,000 toys have been collected and donated, 2,600 of which in 2021. Our reindeer buses, which we have 9 of, as you probably know, were handy to bring the toys to the Lower Mainland Christmas Bureau. And another area of tradition for us is our support across the entire TransLink enterprise for supporting United Way. On the CMBC side, Unifor 111 and 2200, our transit operators and our maintenance trades respectively, participate every summer. They run their campaign every summer, and this last summer they raised over $200,000 for that initiative. So kudos to our team there. And next slide, please. And so just to close, this image here is a fleet overhaul, our fleet overhaul facility at Burnaby Transit Center. In February, they hosted the TransLink social media teams and did our very first Instagram live stream from inside one of our enterprise facilities. A big success, and I want to thank our managers there, Kevin Dirks and Jack McKenna, for leading the charge, leading the tour. We're looking forward to doing more of this behind the scenes for the public to show all of what we do at Coast Mountain Bus Company, because we do a lot. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mike, thank you very much. You brought a smile to my face with the reindeer bus, so thank you for sharing that. It wasn't out of season for me, because every time I would see that bus go by, I'd be smiling and almost waving at it, so it's kind of fun. I do want to comment on how pleased I am to see all your focus on women and recruiting women for your organization. I think it's a really important issue, and I know that your first question is going to be from Andy Ross, and I know he's going to have a comment about that as well. So Andy, the floor is yours.
You're absolutely right, Chair. Mike, thanks for the report. I've got actually 2 areas. I just want to touch first on the rollout of the Braille signage. I was fortunate enough to be down at a Broad Station on the rollout, and I think it's excellent work. I remember when we first started reaching out to the Canadian National Institute of the Blind many years ago and seen the progress as it rolled out. But I do just want to mention here on our public section, our user advisory committee, which give us insight, if you pardon the pun, into this and many other hindrances that prevent people with various disabilities from fully utilizing our system. And their insight and input into these things, I just want to recognize how valuable it is, and it's great to be the first one in North America with a fully Braille sign. So kudos. And I do want to mention, as Lorraine said, about the emphasis now on trying to bring a gender balance ratio into our workforce. Having been part of it 40 years, I think we're way too long. And I know stereotypes evolve around certain traditional kind of jobs. And I think it's way past time that we try to do everything we possibly can. We're seeing people now reevaluate their lifestyles and what they're doing. And I think within Coast Mountain Bus Company and SkyTrain and our spectrum of transit, there are some fantastic opportunities for women that they probably haven't considered before. So the more we can do on not just women, but especially to reflect so we look like our community is really laudable. So I encourage both your team there and our enterprise team as well. Let's get creative, let's get imaginative, let's find out what we can do to really reflect our society. So good work and keep that up. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Those two great programs that you highlighted, and thanks for the support in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen.
Thank you for the presentation, and also for bringing back those reindeer buses front of mind. It was such a joy to see them, and I did stand and wave from the side of the street whenever I saw a reindeer bus, so thank you for that. I had a question. In the report documents that we received, there was a note about climate change resilience and adaptation, and I really appreciate the thought that's being put into that, especially for the resilience of the organization. I wondered if, whether today or in the future, to hear more about what that looks like for the customer experience. I know that we've heard from you about the air conditioning in the fleet, for example, and the goals to increase the number of buses with air conditioning. But I'm wondering if there's more and other things that we'll be hearing about, whether that's shade at more bus stops or use of shade trees or things like that. It's something I'm very interested in hearing about. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Director Chen. There's two sides to this, right? There's and we've talked a lot about the low carbonization side of things, where we're talking about the future 10, 20, and 30 years to lower our carbon footprint. And then there's the today as well. And there is that adaptation today that we're trying to do. We will bring more information forward, but it's something that, given what's happened over this last year, from the heat dome to the tornado that hit the UBC area to the atmospheric rivers, what we, I think, have recognized is that all of our resiliency needs to step up more. And it needs to step up for our customers on the one side, as you mentioned, and it also has to step up for our assets, our physical assets, and our rolling stock, to make sure that they are resilient. So your example that you gave, for example, is air-conditioned buses. Obviously, every single new bus is an air-conditioned bus now. And we're trying to convert those, obviously, as quick as we can when we do gain new rolling stock. But there are other things that we do have planned. It is a work in progress. And likely I will give a bit more of an update at the Q2 meeting for the board. But thank you. It's something we're working on. And I think after 2021, we all recognize it's a bigger project than we thought.
Thank you. Mike, I have one question. One of our speakers was commenting on the air filters in our buses. And I read in your report that we've actually been doing some of that work already on the buses. And I thought maybe you could comment on that for a moment.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, thanks, Madam Chair. There's a couple of things we've done over the last 2 years. Probably the first one that comes to mind is the Flettner vents that we put in all of our handy dart vehicles. So every one of our vehicles had what's called a Flettner vent installed, and you see these on a lot of vehicles, industrial vehicles, and it looks like a little top that's spinning at the top of the roof. And essentially what it is while the vehicle drives, it refreshes the air that's inside the vehicle. It was a very inefficient, very efficient and very quick install of that program. We did that over a couple of months. That helped with the airflow within those vehicles. But other things that we already had, most of our conventional buses have a fresh air intake setting on our filtration system. And so that combined with windows being opened on buses that could open, the combination of doors, especially all door boarding buses being opened at every stop. When we did our testing, there was a lot of fresh air that was coming in the buses, and it's something we continue to look at. We are also watching what technology does. If you might remember, we did what was called the PCO trial, and that was something that the air went through a filter of sorts, and we did testing. It proved mostly to be kind of unfounded, mostly because there was so much fresh air coming into the bus. So a control bus and an experiment bus didn't actually show that much of a difference. That said, we are continuing to watch what technology does. And there has been some more things that have emerged over the last maybe half year, where it's going to continue to, and we will watch that. But I did listen very carefully to that delegate that was making those comments, as we do with all of them. And we'll note that. And if there is something that we should be doing in the future, we'll bring that back to discuss that.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. Okay, well, I don't see any further questions for you, so I think you're complete for the day. And we're now going to ask Chief Jones to join us and bring us an update on the transit police. So Chief Jones.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I'm pleased to present on behalf of the Metro Vancouver Transit Police here this morning and give you an update on some key initiatives and items that are occurring. Next slide. You know, one of the things that we continue to maintain and be involved with is our First Nations and Indigenous outreach. We spoke about this before, where we had started the Blue Eagle Cadet Program. That program primarily started in Vancouver around the commercial Broadway area. And this year, after only 1 year of successfully operating there, we've expanded the program to a second site now. This occurs out in the city of Surrey. We've been joined by both the Surrey RCMP and the Surrey Police Service in helping run this program. As you can see that we had 17 youth attending, and registrations are continuing to grow. It's a program that kind of grows by word of mouth in terms of it. Why we keep emphasizing this program is it allows us introduction not only to kids, as we like to say, we address the urbanized Indigenous youth. These are ones whose home nations are probably in the north of BC, are not from the local area. But in addition, we also find ourselves interacting with the families, mothers, fathers, older brothers and sisters who might also be experiencing some difficulties, and being able to assist them along the way in terms of it. The program itself is designed to connect kids to their Indigenous heritage, and a lot of it focuses on the teachings of elders and them who come into the sessions every week and introduce themselves to the youth. I'd like to say, without the support of several sponsors, including TransLink, the Vancouver Police Department, it wouldn't be the success it is. It's probably one of the fastest growing programs between police and Indigenous youth in the Lower Mainland at this point in time. Next slide. This is just want to introduce that we've finally finished our strategic plan. There was a bit of when I say finally, we had a bit of a delay. We had started this just as COVID took over, and then moving things virtually and doing consultation and ensuring that we did the right amount of consultation and appropriate with each and every group, whether it be individual groups, whether it be community groups, whether it be our members, staff, made a very fulsome approach to it, that we're able to say that we have completed the document and it's out. Hopefully you've received a copy of it. If you haven't, we'll make sure that one gets distributed to you. And one of the big things on here was that it's based on 3 pillars with 19 key performance indicators. Next slide. So one of the biggest things, this is one of the pillars, one of the biggest things we face, of course, is cross-regional policing. You know, transit system passes through 22 communities, and there are 17 different policing jurisdictions covering about 1,800 square kilometers. So in order to effectively police, because we cannot be spread out through the 1,800 square kilometers at all times, we need to have strong partnerships with our cross-regional policing partners. So this pillar, as we have it, also looks for future system expansion, with it getting set to expand in the coming years down Broadway and the Surrey Langley. And we never want to omit the expansion of major bus routes and hubs into community areas, which we're paying attention to as well. So we need to prepare to have officers stationed strategically, both in terms of response to calls and deployment models. So one of the key indicators that we're going to be tracking under this file and pillar is the number of files that we interchange between the jurisdictional police agencies. We're seeing that as TransLink is expanding, and as we see in a lot of these areas we talk about, whether it be the Lougheed, Surrey Central, Metro Town, Brentwood, basically communities are being built on transit. And that interface between the jurisdictional police and ourselves is becoming more important and needs to be more seamless as we as people come to expect. They just see a safety measure. They want to see that they're safe leaving their house, getting to transit, and when they get off transit. And so working together to ensure that that occurs both by working with our jurisdictional partners and ourselves is important. You just kind of see in the picture here, this would be up in the Phipps Exchange area, up in North Vancouver, where we partner with the RCMP to provide area patrols in and around the major transit hubs on the North Shore area. Next slide. One of the key aspects also in the second pillar is engage community partners. Policing was really built on community-based policing principles. And so this pillar acknowledges that we need to draw on the expertise of our TransLink enterprise partners, community partners, and others to increase the perceptions of safety on transit and ensure that all transit users receive the same services they require. This could include someone suffering from a mental health crisis, that they receive the care of medical practitioners, or that of someone who's homeless, that we're able to connect them to a local shelter. We've always said that there's a changing dynamics within our communities and even with the laws and how we view certain activities. No longer is it appropriate that policing sees issues such as addiction, homelessness, or mental health as a criminal justice program or problem, that it needs to be addressed, and to be addressed effectively has to be done by partners in the community. The police may be the entrance point to it, may be the gateway to helping someone or identifying someone who needs that assistance, but we're not the end all, so we need that type of program. So part of our strategic plan is developing strategies related to youth engagement, mental health support, assisting vulnerable persons and the homeless, establishing further partnerships with organizations for frontline health and social services, and developing annual seasonal campaigns, to really highlight the safety. And I'm going to say part of anything is engineering and education and enforcement, but making sure we have that educational component that speaks to the public about safety campaigns and addresses the current issues and concerns that are occurring. Next slide. This is under the third slide, or third pillar, is a modern policing culture. And part of this is someone, to explain it when you read it is, it's about us, reflecting the community we serve. It's the diversity that we bring to it, having the skills and tools for the job that our employees are expected to perform, trusting in the senior leadership around transit police, and of course being committed to the organization. We want people to understand that they can come and grow within the organization, and that we're committed to finding those ways to making their jobs fulfilling, and different ways of doing it. You've heard on different parts of this, whether it's the future state of work from home, part-time work from home, and that are all avenues that we're exploring. Some of our specific actions here will include establishing an equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy, very particular here at the Transit Police, updating recruitment campaign and messaging to support employee diversity, and exploring opportunities provided, and we call it for a tiered policing model with the introduction of a community policing, community safety officer program. I'm happy to say on that we should be one signature away from the biggest hurdle of getting the final application into the province. So a little nudge to the CEO today will be just great for us. So I think that's one signature away on a document. So one of the metrics that will be tracked, of course, in this is the number of diverse employees by rank. And just as an example, I give you here is that we have taken to looking at seconding in some police officers in senior positions from other agencies to give them an opportunity to work here, almost in a mentoring type position. And we were successful. Some of you may have already met new Deputy Chief Anita Furlan, who came from the RCMP and spent just over a year with us before deciding that she would like to stay, and took on a position with Barry Cross's pending retirement. And since then, this year, we've had 2 other people apply to come or make requests to come here on secondment mentorships. Both individuals, one male inspector and one female inspector, who will be joining our ranks, one in April and one in May, to bolster it and bringing diversity and basically bringing close to 50% of the senior executive team into a diverse level at this point in time. Next slide. This is the key performance indicators, really kind of just broken down. It's a really easy slide that we can post to our members. They can see it's kind of how measurements we'll be looking at, in terms of what we're, how we're doing. Some of them are internal focus, some are, focused on crime, some are focused on, our partnerships as we move through it. So this just kind of outlines the 19, if I want to call it, key performance indicators that we will be following when we go through here. And some of them are new, like the number of referrals to a social services provider, the number of files transferred from police partners back to us, being able to track those things, the number of files generated by text reports, because we continue to see, despite a decrease of riders in 2020, we continue to see an increasing in actual numbers of files generated by text reporting. So the importance of this and the greater acceptance of it is something we need to truly track at this point in time. Next slide. So this here is just a quick look at some of the 2021 stats. As you see, files generated from text reports are up 22%. Some may have heard at times that about wait times at e-com, and that we still maintain our own dispatch. So we haven't been affected by those what's occurred in the e-com area. So these are actually just being generated just because that is a preferred method. Rates of crimes against persons was down 8%. Rates of crimes against property were up. Mental health apprehensions, despite a lower ridership number still, there is a lot of individuals in the community who are suffering from mental health issues, are being located in, around, and on the systems more frequently. And again, when we say apprehensions, this is it's both not a good number because it's going up, but it isn't bad because we're at least being able to interject it into these individuals during a period of crisis and get them the assistance that they may need in terms of it. Arrest warrants executed was up. A lot of that is, remember, these are not our warrants. These are warrants from other parts or jurisdictions around the province, mainly throughout the Lower Mainland, and arrest and new charges being down. And that's not surprisingly to see new charges in that down, as the courts are really, and we are supportive of it, looking at alternate ways to deal with individuals who have had minor indiscretions with the law. In terms of it, looking at having them enter into a program such as the Blue Eagle program if they're a youth, being diverted from the system, looking at other ways other than the criminal justice system to address problems that are occurring in the area. Next slide. And then just as I end, I would just like to indicate that over the last while, there's been a couple of key things that have happened as we see ongoing. We continue to see, obviously, protests happen throughout the Lower Mainland area, whether it be involving vaccine protests, protests against the war, protests in different areas. The city of Vancouver, I believe, has seen a record number of protests. We've been more engaged with these events, mainly that we work to ensure that transit keeps flowing. Buses are able to be rerouted. Quite often the transit security supervisors are looking after that. However, we're always prepared when there are large-scale protests in or around major transit hubs, mainly the SkyTrain and Canada Line, with officers who are dedicated to the protest to ensure that we keep the systems open and moving. And we're working with the jurisdictional police in terms of how it goes. And also there was a letter that was received by us from the Abbotsford Police Department, just a thank you that we've also shown our ability and our members to step up. When Abbotsford experienced the flooding and the damages that occurred in their area, they required a significant number of members just for safety and security of the communities once it was evacuated. And they were able to call upon other agencies, including ourselves, and appreciative of our members in that, because there were some days where they required a substantial amount, and these were members that were being brought in on their overtime, paid for by the Abbotsford or the province at the end of the day, to go out and provide some pretty static security and safety for the area. Otherwise, they just simply didn't have enough resources. So certainly appreciated the work that the members stepped up to the plate to do there. And with that, I just end with that we're that one signature away from the CSO final application being done.
So Chief Jones, just remind us again who that signature needs to come from.
The CEO.
Okay, we'll work on that.
I appreciate it. Has been a long haul, and there's been a lot of work done by a lot of staff members, and so we're finally, I would say we're finally there, right? And I want to keep the momentum going. So
I appreciate that. Well, thanks for helping us be very clear about that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say before I pass the floor over to Marcella that I'm really encouraged to see the increase in texting around incidents. And I think that's a number that should continue to be shown around the system, because I think that more and more people are comfortable sitting quietly on their phone and reporting something, and that really helps in keeping our systems safe. So, so I'm encouraged to see that working so well.
One of the things, Madam Chair, that we want to highlight in a fall campaign about safety to people is that we view it as that when you're on transit or using transit, you're pretty much never, it's like you're never alone. Even if you're at a bus stop on a street, on a residential street where you might not think there's anyone around, you could be texting us if you felt scared or there was a concern, right? So once you enter the system, from bus drivers to transit security to STAs to other passengers to security cameras, you're really not alone when you once you get to a transit location and start your movement. And so I think we see the value in highlighting that and reminding people, just because you're sitting somewhere, and if there's something that concerns you, you can be live texting with one of our dispatchers while you're there. So.
Thank you. I think that's really good to know. Marcella.
Thank you very much. And Chief Jones, thank you as always for your excellent report and continued focus on the safety and security of our passengers and people on our system. I just want to comment or question really around crimes against people on our system, which is very distressing. I know the statistics have gone down slightly, which is excellent. But maybe it's just me, but it seems that they seem to be more public or more senseless and vicious. And maybe it's because it's advertised, there's more press reports about it. I'm not sure, Chief. So I just wanted to ask you about any comment you might have on that, number one. And number two, do you have any sense of how our region might compare with similar regions on this issue?
So thank you, Marcella. I think traditionally the seriousness of the assaults we've been tracking, and they've tended to remain consistent, if I would call it, although it's down a bit. Those are the ones I look at where a weapon's been used or some form of injuries really occurred. But there is a higher profile with people putting out, having access to video that they display, people putting it out on their own social media or providing it to media who then display it. So we saw a slight decrease in that. So I think the idea is that we are, of course, throughout the region, you've heard a lot more of these random assaults or outbursts, if you want to call it, that are occurring. and I'm going to say not everywhere, but in some more heavily populated or areas that might be a bit unique because of the residential situation. So we have a tendency to focus attention into those areas more as it goes. It's been a growing through the pandemic to a degree, so no one has thoroughly studied it to say the result is because of, displacement of housing or because of, access to drugs or narcotics, if you want to call it. So there is a concern when it's stranger related, because normally you can't attach a logical reasoning to it in terms of it. We're also cognizant, and I think to be aware is, and you would have heard it from your first speakers here, is the people who continue to use transit throughout the pandemic became used to open space, to not being crowded, right? So we're being very conscious of the mask, no mask, and as buses and SkyTrain cars become more compressed with people getting into it, some people are now not comfortable again with their personal area perhaps being infringed upon. So it's something our own members talk anecdotally about. And so we'll continue to monitor the stats to see where they go. As I said, we're happy it's downward, but looking at the severity of it, we do want to know that, why are things becoming more severe, in particular if a weapon's involved.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. So Director Chan.
Thank you, Chief Jones. This isn't so much a question, more just kudos to you and congratulations on the strategic plan, and in particular on the commitments to progress on diversity and inclusion that it contains. And I know that you already flagged the KPI on the number of or diversity of employees by rank. And I really appreciate as well some of the other items in the KPIs, for example, languages spoken by transit employees, the number of community events attended, and speaking to action items regarding training and serving diverse communities of transit users. I just wanted to express my appreciation that you've included those as key performance indicators so that this progress is not only spoken of and committed to, but also intended to be measured as well. So thanks so much for that and congratulations.
Thanks. And just a quick reply to that. We have these successes that we like to talk about, and sometimes it only involves one individual. And so some of you might be familiar with, we have a neighborhood police officer, Constable Jenny Chung, who works the kind of the Burnaby and Coquitlam area. And just as an example, there was a middle-aged gentleman, I'll say, who probably came here from I don't think it'll be revealed, from Korea for the 2010 Olympics as a carpenter, and then lost his job and went through some things, and eventually lost his documentation and that, and became homeless. And when we were able to interact, Constable Chung, who's familiar with the consulate, a matter of getting him, all he needed was paperwork really to get him back on his feet, his identification, his passport and that. And once that's achieved, he's now back into housing, he's working full time and that. It takes some time, but the view is we're not going to give up on one person thinking that one isn't enough, right? Where we're able to help, we'll continue to do that. And having a resource such as Constable Jenny Chung is just invaluable, right? Being able to speak the language, being able to relate through the processes and that, and have somewhat of a connection with the individual made a big difference. So yeah, that's what we have to capture in our planning and our kind of results base, which is now what we're looking to do.
Thank you, Chief Jones. I don't want to say goodbye until I please pass on our congratulations to Deputy Chief Officer Furlan on behalf of the board. I think it's a wonderful accomplishment for her and for your organization to now have some diversity in your leadership group, which I know you have a very good balance.
More to come.
Gender diversity, yeah.
More to come.
Yeah.
Meeting at 1:30 today.
Okay.
I'm holding out the next one for a signature.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to move on in our agenda. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is our Finance and Audit Committee Chair report. And I'm going to ask Sarah Clark to provide her report. So thank you, Sarah, wherever you are.
Thank you, Lorraine. The committee met last week, March 15th, and we covered a number of topics. We started off with safety, and we've heard a lot of safety today from Michelle, Mike, and Chief Jones. There's definitely good progress in the organization and a shift in the culture, because you're starting, after much work by many individuals, you're starting to see the stats reflect the incredible effort that is being put forward in this area. We covered a number of items that will also be covered here today on our agenda, including the year-end financial and performance report. And I'd like to congratulate Chris and the team and the whole organization again this year, and all their incredible work throughout the pandemic and the atmospheric rivers and the winter conditions. They had to deal, every year is challenging at TransLink, and there's been a lot of extra challenges, so great work there. And then we heard from our external auditors on the consolidated financial statements, and again, a very clean audit and a lot of compliments from the team at KPMG about our financial team and how prepared and how professional they are. So thank you for that. Every meeting we do cover our internal audit as well, and our continuous improvement program, and we had an excellent report from Tony Pollard on the initiatives that are in the works and that have been closed and now are actionable, and the progress there. Other items that will be covered today are the transit tariff amendment and the property bylaw and replacement tax bylaw. So I'm able to take any questions people have, but we will be dealing with a number of these items in our agenda later on today.
Thank you, Sarah. I know many of the board members were at the committee meeting, but if there's any questions for Sarah in regards to a report, this would be the appropriate time to ask her. Okay, well, seeing none, Sarah, we're going to move on then to Mayor Jonathan Cote, who's going to make his report on the Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee.
Well, thank you, Lorraine. The Planning and Stakeholder Committee did meet once this quarter. I'd first like to begin on behalf of the Planning and Stakeholder Committee on congratulating and welcoming Sarah Ross into her new role as Vice President of Planning at TransLink. I know we were all a little bit sad when we found out that Jeff Cross was leaving us at the end of this year. But I think we all felt comfortable that the planning team at TransLink was incredibly strong, and Sarah has a long history with us, and we know her very well, and I want to congratulate and welcome, and we're really excited to work with her through our various initiatives. So congratulations, Sarah, on that role. The Planning and Stakeholder Committee focused, continues to focus on a whole range of planning issues that TransLink's working on, particularly putting some mind to how do we emerge out of the pandemic, build back our momentum, and really move forward with our bold vision. As everyone knows, the TransLink board and the Mayor's Council did adopt Transport 2050 earlier this year, which was our bold long-range plan for the region. Now, taking that long-range plan and starting to put it into reality, we're starting to put our minds to putting those pieces together. And Kevin alluded to it in his CEO discussion, but the next step is actually our new vision work. And we know our region has been really well served by the mayor's 10-year vision, which has provided that shorter 10-year bold vision for the priorities that we want to be investing in. And the Planning and Stakeholder Committee, and along with the entire board, has been engaged with those early discussions. And I'm looking forward to later this spring becoming more active in those discussions and putting together what I would say is the next piece after the adoption of Transport 2050 to help us really continue with the momentum and bold vision we have for transit expansion in the region. We have a number of reports following coming up in our board meeting today. Planning and Stakeholder Committee engaged with. We have our Indigenous vision and statement for endorsement on the board. I think we all recognize TransLink is going through our journey towards reconciliation, and I think this work is just a starting point for an area where TransLink's going to become more involved and more engaged. Upcoming issues related to this is transit service and better connections to reserves. We also know that there's going to be new discussions about governance. So I think today we're starting to set the scene for what I would anticipate a lot more discussions, both at this table and the Mayor's Council table, and on our journey towards the reconciliation process. We also talked quite extensively at our last Planning and Stakeholder Committee about the Customer Service Action Plan, and that's another report on our agenda today. This really builds upon the success that we've had previously with TransLink with this work and trying to be a customer-focused organization. I think we recognize as we move out of the pandemic that now more than ever we need to be a customer-focused organization, and I think this report clearly actually starts to articulate how we need to look at our customers for the unique customers they are, because a transit customer is not all the same. We all come from different backgrounds, have different needs, and I think that's the real big evolution that I think that we're starting to see in this work, and really happy to see that moving forward. So happy to answer any questions from the board members of the work from the Planning and Stakeholder Committee.
Thank you, Jonathan. So any questions for Jonathan in regards to his report? I just wanted to add, Jonathan, our congratulations to Sarah for her appointment, and also to say that we did conduct a full and extensive search for that role. So it wasn't as if she just got that job because she was working inside the organization. She competed against people from around the nation and around the world, really. So I just wanted to comment on that as well. So congratulations to Sarah. Okay, we will move on now to our next report, which is our Human Resources and Governance Committee Chair report. And I'll turn it over to Marcella to present that report. Thank you, Marcella.
Thank you very much. The HR and Governance Committee, as all the other committees, met last week and had a fulsome meeting over a number of subjects. But before I go over some of the issues, I just want to make a special note that TransLink has been selected by Forbes magazine as one of Canada's top employers. This is not by accident. It's excellent work on behalf of all the team and everybody at TransLink. It doesn't come by happenstance, and I congratulate everyone at TransLink for their supreme work to come to that point. In terms of activities that we discussed, we looked at the voluntary turnover in the organization. It's increased not significantly quarter over quarter or quarter over the year before. However, on an annualized basis, the turnover is about 6.6%, which is higher than we've experienced in the past. However, it is consistent with what other organizations are experiencing in the current pandemic, post-pandemic world that we live in. And so it has all the attendant issues around replacing people, et cetera, but we are in no different position than any other organization. In terms of the returning to work and what we've called future of work, because it's not just how you come back to work, but it's how we will be working in the future at TransLink. The full launch is April. You may recall that we've had other dates that we might have started a full launch and then the pandemic continued, or new waves. So it is now in fact launching in April. There have been what we've called resident workers who have had to come to the office, have been coming throughout this period in a very safe environment, of course. However, now all the work is almost done and working through making sure that there's a priority around desktop reservation systems, technology improvements, meeting rooms, recalibrating where and how people work, and mostly creating a welcoming environment to everyone. All of this, by the way, as we all know, is also happening in a time where there's a chip shortage and therefore causing some issues with respect to the technology, but the team is working through all of that. At the same time, there's a lot of work being done on leadership competencies throughout the organization. I think you've heard both Michelle and Mike speak about that within their organizations as well, and that continues to be rolled out. Corporate wellness is a big focus, and there is a special focus on psychological health and safety, which, if you recall last meeting, TransLink unrolled a policy that the board approved. Mike has already referred to it, but we did have a good discussion around the Women in Trades initiative being led by BCRTC, which we obviously support, and just want to note that one of our board members, Andy Ross, was very much involved in that process, and thank you, Andy, for that. We are, as you can imagine, given the turnover, talent acquisition is very active. We're currently recruiting for about 280 positions. We've already filled 173 this year, and that's a lot of activity within the HR department. Education programs are continuing. We're really excited that there's a joint partnership with UBC around leadership development, and that has already begun. Again, Mike mentioned this, but it's very, very exciting. As well, there's many other training modules that are available and are being used by employees within TransLink, which is really good. We also received a report on the progress of Indigenous relations, and I think that has already been covered. Thank you very much, Jonathan. So I won't go into that. We fundamentally received the same report and had a similar discussion around that. And then we reviewed a number of standard policies and practices that come to the committee for approval and review on an annual basis. So that is my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Marcella on her report? All right, well, seeing none, I'm going to ask Karen Horcher to present the first ever Information Technology Committee report, because this is a new committee that we've just established. So Karen, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, as Chair Cunningham mentioned, the Information Technology Committee is a new committee of the board. It's a brand new committee and met for the first time earlier this month. Like the other committees of the board, the plan will be to have quarterly meetings with fairly extensive updates with management and fairly extensive discussions. At our very first meeting, the committee worked with Kurt Pregler and his team to provide input on draft terms of reference, which are based on international best practices, reviewed the 2022 proposed work plan, and planned upcoming quarterly meetings as noted previously. From management, we received an update on IT security. And as a note, TransLink continues to invest in and enhance IT security across the organization. We also received an update on the ERP program as one of the major IT initiatives throughout TransLink. In Michelle's presentation earlier this morning, you heard a little bit about the part of that program, and you probably will hear a little bit more about that program with Chris Staker's CFO report a little later on. Finally, we received updates on various other IT and technology programs and projects that are moving forward throughout the organization. And given that it's a large and complex organization, there are quite a few projects on the go, and we had discussion on a number of them. Madam Chair, that's my report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen in regards to her report? Oh, Andy, I see you have your hand up.
I do, thank you. Karen, thanks for your first report, and I apologize if this puts you on the spot, but I had the opportunity last week to participate in a workshop put on for directors across the country, talking specifically about cybersecurity during geopolitical conflict, obviously with Ukraine front of mind. And I'm just wondering, they said there to expect an increase of attacks, cyber attacks and hacks and stuff. I'm just wondering whether your committee discussed this and if we've seen any evidence of this happening within our organizations.
Thanks, Andy, for the question. Yeah, it's a really good question, and I also attended that presentation. I think that all large entities, in particular government and infrastructure-related entities, are potential targets in the current environment. I think they were prior to the current conflict, but I think that, as you know, that conflict has increased. That risk has increased. We certainly have had discussion about that. We actually had discussion about that prior to the current conflict. It has been an elevated risk environment really from the beginnings of employees across the globe working remotely. So I think that that Kurt and his team have been pretty proactive in kind of the anticipation of a higher risk or threat level. And as a committee, it's something that we're monitoring pretty closely. I think we're all pretty aware of the fact that it is an unusual environment, and so we want to be as proactive as possible. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, it does. I'm glad it's on the radar screen. You guys are on top of it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Karen. I don't see any other questions. So I appreciate you taking on this new committee. I think it's so fundamental to the organization to make sure that our technology systems are well secured and also developed in an efficient way. So because we can't operate without the technology these days. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda, we're going to move now to item number 11, which is our Customer Experience Action Plan. And we have Steve Vanagas here to present this information for us.
Hi, Chair. Good morning, and good morning to the board. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate the time. Excited today to be dropping our new Customer Experience Action Plan that we've been working on for some time. This plan details our commitment to the customer and how we're going to serve the changing needs of our customer over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So we're building off the foundation of our first customer experience plan that we delivered back in 2019. That included our customer promise, which still holds today. And that's to always put you first, your safety, your time, and your connection to the people and places that matter most. That's our customer promise, and we're holding to that, and we hold ourselves to that every day. Next slide, please. Since its release in 2019, we've delivered 82% of the customer-facing projects that were outlined in that plan. And that includes many of the initiatives and amenities that you've seen on the system today and are very familiar to you today. The tap-to-pay system at our turnstiles, at our fare gates, the information displays on the Expo line and Millennium line, the rapid bus corridors, double-decker buses, and much, much more. And it's something that I think our customers have very much appreciated every step of the way. Next slide, please. So to develop this particular plan, which has been in the works for a little bit of time now, we went out there and talked to our customers pretty extensively. We received over 1,200 ideas for the customer experience from those customers. We talked to our frontline transit workers, bus operators, SkyTrain attendants, transit supervisors. We look closely at best practices in the transit sector and in the non-transit sector, looking at every range of customer idea that we could think of. Now, before I go on, I just want to quickly note that there's a lot of work that has to get done to get these projects advanced. We need to secure funding, we need to secure approvals, and we'll be working on that next. We've got T2050 10-year priorities coming up, the investment plan, and those are the forums through which we'll seek approval and funding for a lot of the ideas you're about to see me talk about in more detail today. Next slide, please. So to start with, we identified 5 customer mindsets. Now, this represents how our customers think about their options for traveling. We want to recognize that our customers have many, many different needs when they're traveling on the transit system. Think about how you fit into one of these categories. It might change depending on the day, the time of week, what your needs are. But we wanted to start with thinking through how our customers think about their travel options and how they think about their journey on transit. Next slide, please. We also developed a customer journey map to look at the key moments where we can really improve the customer experience. And we think that every step of the way, there's an opportunity to make a positive impression on our customers. At every step of the way, every interaction, we think we can look at ways to make it even better. Now, I'm going to show you a quick video. It's only a couple minutes long that'll take you through this customer journey. It'll just take a second here.
TransLink and its operating companies have the ability to make a difference to our customers and our business. Each step along the customer journey is an opportunity for us to make a positive impression and improve the customer experience. Defining the key moments that matter within a customer journey provides not only the insight we need, it allows us to identify the opportunities we have to positively impact the overall transit experience. A customer's journey starts the moment they begin planning their travel. Access to information, tools, price are all key factors that can influence the planning and evaluation of travel options. From here, our customers move through the pre-board and first mile stages before the actual transaction occurs. When waiting and riding in system, customers rely on us for real-time and accurate information related to next vehicles, delays, disruptions, and alternative routes. Our employees continue to support the overall experience by helping customers make their system navigation decisions and connections, as well as access to their last mile transport options. Even when the trip is complete, the journey continues as we consider ways to better support return trips and post-travel planning. The overall customer experience is an aggregate of all these key moments, so it's our goal to treat each stage in this journey as a chance to engage, learn, and be better, so that the overall experience can be just that, better.
So we have 5 priorities that will be focused on for the next 5 years for the customer experience. First, we want to make the system more personalized. That means we're going to be looking at things like the next generation of our Compass system. We want to make it easier to use. So that means things like the contactless debit payments that we've talked about previously. We want to make it more timely, more reliable. That means more rapid bus corridors, more real-time information on the system. We want to make the trips safer and more pleasant. So that means more customer amenities. We hear that again and again, and we've got to look at how we can deliver more customer amenities. And then we need to offer a better reason to ride. And you've seen our climate action strategy and our commitment to zero emission transit. That's something our customers want. We need to deliver it. Next slide, please. So just in conclusion, you have the action plan in front of you. We will be posting it to our website as well. I just also want to note that we should always be open to listening to our customers when it comes to getting new ideas. And that's why we're opening a new mailbox inbox for our customers who have some ideas on how we can improve that experience. You see the address there on your bottom left. It's cxideas@translink.ca. We're committed to listening. We're committed to getting that kind of feedback, and we will be reporting out periodically on our progress on delivering this plan. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve. Well, when I saw this document at one of the committees, I thought it was a fantastic piece of work. The video just kind of put the icing on the cake for me, so I thought that was well done, so I appreciate that. And I know that part of this is also this day that you're planning this transit for the planet, and which I think is really admirable. And I really like that concept of people thinking about taking transit for other reasons than just to get from A to B. It's all about this bigger climate action issue that we all need to be participating in. So I'm going to go to the first question here, and Dr. Dhaliwal.
Great, thank you, Lorraine. Hey, Steve, great presentation. You know, I'm a big fan of the customer journey and the work that you and your team have done on that. That's absolutely fantastic. In your one of your last slides in the five priorities, you mentioned just very briefly real-time information. I'm just wondering what the status of getting that up is, and is there any plans for TransLink to come up with their own app for our users, or are we still going to rely on third-party apps?
Yeah, great questions. We're really happy with the work that we've done up to now in installing those passenger information displays and the information displays at our entrances as well. You see them now on the Expo line, the Millennium line. What we're now exploring is what's the next step we can take on those information displays. How do we get what I call real time, all the time, everywhere? Because that's what our customers expect. And that's what we're going to be looking at next is how do we do that? How do we make that work? There's technology is evolving all the time. So that's something we're going to keep exploring. And so I don't want to say right now what it is that we're going to go to, because that's a matter that we're researching right now. As for the app, good question. It comes up all the time. At the moment, we think it's just more efficient to use all the various app providers that are out there. You know, they can make that big investment, and there's a lot of really big technology investments that have to be made to deliver an app. And so at the moment, what we want to do is continue working with those app providers and make sure that the experience they're providing customers, our customers, is as really as good as possible, by giving them the data and making that data and information available to those providers. So that's where it stands right now. We're always looking at how do we do that better. We're going to keep exploring that, but for now, I think we're just going to keep focused on that.
Great, thank you very much, Steve. And Marcella has a question.
Thank you. Steve, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I'm so excited to see that we're on CX2 in terms of our action plan. And I will say, because I think it's really important to understand how far we've come. In 2010, the customer action plan was 10 people drawn from all over the organization who sat in a room and talked about their experiences and tried to develop a plan or action to improve the customer experience. And they made a presentation to the board with flip charts. And from that, it has developed into this incredible plan that you have before us. And so I just really want to compliment you on that. I would like to say a second thing, which is really on behalf of our ex-board member, Larry Beasley. Don't forget, it has to be fun. Riding transit has to be safe, convenient, on time, but it also needs to be fun. So there's the voice from the past from Larry. Thank you.
I keep that in mind all the time. Thanks for that. And we do, it is part of our plan. We want to make the transit trip safe and more pleasant. And so you're going to see some pretty exciting initiatives starting this summer that I think you're going to find really engaging. We're trying to get more energy back into that transit system, make our customers feel really great about traveling on our system. So stay tuned for more on that front. I think Larry will be very happy with what we do.
You've done a great job on the sweepstakes. That was fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Karen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Steve, thanks for your presentation. And in a sense, Marcella sort of took part of my question. And my question, and I don't expect you to give anything up at this point in time, but when we did the Dine the Line some time ago, that was such a great opportunity for people to get out and explore the region. And I think right now there's a lot of pent-up demand to do things. And sometimes we don't think of all the things to do because we don't know other areas. And I wondered whether you might be considering some variation of that, because it almost feels like we got a bit shortchanged with COVID when that rolled out. And again, I don't expect you to give anything away, but it would be really nice to see some ways to explore the region using transit that we might not think of as customers or users of the system.
Yeah, you know, I think you nailed it. I think there's a real opportunity here for us to get out there and encourage people to explore the city, to explore the neighborhoods throughout the city and use transit while doing it. It's something that we have worked on, and we're going to continue partnering with the tourism associations, the business improvement associations, and many other neighborhoods throughout this region. You're right, I don't want to say too much more because we're still nailing down details, but stay tuned. I think we're going to have a really exciting summer ahead of us doing exactly that.
Great. Thanks, Steve.
That's great. Well, I know at the end of your report, you asked for the endorsement from the board on this work that you've done. I heard lots of positive feedback at the committee level, and then we've heard more here today. So I think I speak on behalf of the board to say that everyone really thinks this work is fantastic, and we're very pleased to provide our support and endorsement for you and your team to continue on with all the work and roll this out and have some fun with it.
Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item, which is number 12 on our agenda, and it's the Indigenous Relations Vision Statement and Guiding Principles. And Steve, you are also making this presentation.
Yeah, again, thank you, Chair. And I'd like to introduce on the call with me is Alana Simmons, who's our Manager of Indigenous Relations. I just want to start, first of all, by saying that TransLink respects that Indigenous nations and peoples created the first self-reliant societies and were stewards for their lands. These are the lands that we now live and operate on. TransLink recognizes that Indigenous nations and people are active members of the Metro Vancouver community and will continue to be so for generations to come. Next slide, please. So we're here today to speak about our new vision and guiding principles. And you see the proposed vision in front of you there. The Indigenous Relations Vision and Guiding Principles are the foundational documents outlining how TransLink wants to work with Indigenous nations and urban Indigenous peoples. It commits to work in collaboration with Indigenous governments, organizations, and businesses in the pursuit of thriving and sustainable Indigenous communities. The vision and guiding principles integrate feedback from all 10 local Indigenous nations on whose treaty and unceded territories are within TransLink's service area. The foundational documents are based on best practice and have been reviewed multiple times by the Indigenous Relations Framework Steering Committee, senior leadership, and the board in draft form. So there is just one minor change requested by a board member in the second sentence of the vision. The sentence says, "We will be inclusive of Indigenous peoples, their cultures, and their perspectives. As Indigenous cultures are unique to each nation, their culture should be plural." So we request that this amendment be considered within the resolution. Next slide, please. The vision and guiding principles will support the development of long-standing and respectful relationships with Indigenous nations. TransLink wants to ensure that Indigenous people are included in the work we do and advance reconciliation efforts. The inclusion of Indigenous peoples and their perspectives will improve our business. The guiding principles are, as you can see them in front of you here, I won't read them out, but reconciliation, respect, perspectives, inclusion, celebrate, and communication. As our relationships with Indigenous nations get stronger every year, TransLink will continue to work with the nations to address key interests, issues, and priorities for each of the communities. Now, there was one minor change requested by a board member in the first principle under recognition. TransLink recognizes the legal and constitutional rights of Indigenous nations and Indigenous people. We wanted to emphasize the collective, meaning nations, and individual Indigenous rights. And so we request that this amendment be considered within the resolution as well. I just want to turn it over for a moment to Alana to speak briefly about our engagement with the nations on the vision and guiding principles. Alana?
Thank you, Steve. As Steve mentioned, TransLink held meetings with each of the 10 Indigenous nations to discuss the vision and guiding principles. The nations expressed a need for a firm commitment to action, a nation representation, a need to be heard, a holistic approach to the environment, and engagement at early stages of capital and planning projects. As our relationships grow and change, different priorities will emerge, and the nations also requested that the documents be revisited every 5 years to ensure they remain relevant. So back over to Steve for the final slide.
Thanks, Alana. So the legal, political, and social context for Indigenous relations in BC and Canada is evolving rapidly. You all know that. TransLink will continue to engage Indigenous communities on the upcoming T2050 10-year priorities. A reconciliation action plan will be developed to complement this vision and guiding principles you see before you today, and it will set out specific actions TransLink will take to advance reconciliation. So in conclusion, I just want to say that TransLink recognizes that reconciliation is an ongoing commitment. This is not the final step in our path towards reconciliation, but it's the important first action to formally define our commitment to the Indigenous nations of our region and urban Indigenous peoples. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, and happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your presentation, and thank you, Alana, as well. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't have questions, but I'm prepared to move a motion if now is the appropriate time. Happy to wait too, if you'd prefer.
No, I think now would be an appropriate time. I don't see any other questions. I know this has been worked on through the committees, etc. So I think that many people have had a lot of their questions answered. So Andrea, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. So it is a pleasure of mine to move this motion with the noted inclusion of the amended text so that it would be cultures, plural, and then under recognition, Indigenous nations and peoples. And I want to thank staff for being responsive to the discussion around including those changes in it. I don't think I could say it much better than Mr. Vanegas has already done in his report, but just to note from my part, how critical this work is for TransLink to be taking this step, and to emphasize that in my mind, it's definitely not the last step, that the inclusion of Indigenous people in governance of issues, including transportation that affect their material well-being, is critical and the ultimate goal of the work of UNDRIP and DRIPA, and something that I think this gets us moving on the path to, but that I will continue to be pushing for as part of the work as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So do I have a seconder for that motion that Andrea's made? Thank you very much, Andy. I can't see you, but I can hear you. And all in favor?
Aye. In favor, aye.
And any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. So once again, on behalf of the board, thank you for all your work. This has been a journey that we've been on in trying to get this right. And I think in consultation with all of the people that you've been working with, I think the work is really well done, and we look forward to the next step in the process. So thank you so much. Okay, off to the next item on the agenda, which is number 13. And now we get to invite Christine Dacre to the table, and Christine's going to provide us with a presentation in regards to our year-end financial review. So, Christine.
Thank you, Chair. Next slide, please. So the pandemic continued to shape TransLink's operations and finances in 2021, but the latter half of the year was more encouraging, with ridership starting to track upwards. Relative to 2020, ridership increased 2.3%, transit revenues increased 7.3%, and service hours increased 1.3%. And our performance rating was steady at 8.2 out of 10. Next slide. Transit revenues remained suppressed amid multiple waves of COVID-19 in the year, as people in the service region continued to work from home, limit social gatherings, and avoid non-essential travel to varying degrees across the course of the year. The transit revenues were $8 million below budget. Our cost recovery ratio was consistent with 2020 at 33.5%. And prior to the pandemic, we were at 59%. Fortunately, fuel tax, parking tax, and development cost charges all exceeded expectations in the latter half of the year and were favorable to budget overall. Next slide. So before amortization and interest, 81.8 million of savings were achieved across the enterprise. Service-related savings were 37 million through service reductions in response to reduced ridership demand, including Canada Line and Access Transit. Non-service related savings amounted to 23 million, largely due to changes in planned work and project deferrals, as well as vacancy savings. Also, lower fuel and insurance costs and lower fare media and credit card fees relating to the lower ridership. There were lower capital infrastructure contributions to municipalities, which is driven by the timing of project completion.
Can I ask board members to please mute themselves? Sorry, Christine, we just got some unmuted board members here. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So investments in capital projects in 2021 totaled $353 million. There was $89 million on infrastructure projects, some notable ones: Expo escalator replacements, Expo line running rail replacement, and design work for the capstan station. $144 million related to major construction projects. As part of the Expo and Millennium upgrade program, there were fleet acquisitions and design of a new operations and maintenance center. Also included here is the Edmonds OMC capacity upgrade. $50 million was spent on revenue vehicles and $30 million on equipment such as transit management and communication system, fare box replacements, and automatic train control equipment. And $39 million was spent on technology projects such as implementation of an enterprise asset management system, financial system, and our daily operations management system, just to name a few. Next slide. So TransLink's focus in 2021 was on cost efficiencies and cost reductions as we delivered reliable service commitments to the region while rebuilding ridership and planning for the post-COVID paradigm. The senior government relief funding allowed us to continue providing essential services and further our strategic priorities. And a few examples of some of those priorities are the implementation of Compass on HandyDart. We started the implementation of Braille signage on bus stops, which you heard from the Coast Mountain Bus Company report, implementation of free transit for children 12 and under, and we launched the new Burrard Chinook Sea Bus. Our service hours increased from 2020, and the COVID-19 Safe Operating Action Plan was embedded into our communicable disease prevention plans. And our recalibrated capital program focused on maintaining our assets in a state of good repair with $3.1 billion in active projects. I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Christine. And thank you for that report. It's been a challenging couple of years, but I think the organization has really adapted and adjusted well to all of its challenges. And I really just want to commend you on the cost savings that you found and the adjustments that the organization made to kind of deliver the service as best we can across the organization with the money that we had to do. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Christine, for your report. Christine, you made mention of a statistic, and I just wondered if you could clarify it a little bit. The 33.5% cost recovery that has declined from 59% pre-COVID. I just wondered if you could sort of give us a little bit of a big picture as how that relates to sort of financial self-sustainability and just in terms of our funding model and what it means big picture.
Sure. Well, our cost recovery actually normally, the 59% is one of the highest in North America transit agencies. So what it is it's the cost of our operations in relation to the transit revenue that we get to put that transit operations out there. So obviously with the pandemic and our reduced ridership and our lower transit revenue, that's what's causing that cost recovery to be lower. So yes, it is not sustainable. We've already subsidized our transit operations, but not to the extent of what it is now. So fortunately, through the senior government relief fund, of the $644 million that we received for 2020 and 2021, that's helped us significantly. But from a longer term perspective, it is a concern, and we are working towards getting additional funding sources to help us until that ridership comes back.
Right, and I guess that's where I was going, is if we see ridership recover towards the fall or into next year, that bodes well for that cost recovery as well. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Christine, I don't see others with questions. I know this report is a high-level overview to the year, and you have 3 or 4 more reports coming up that have resolutions related to them. So you're going to be with us for a few minutes. So why don't you move on to item number 14, which is my favorite report, the statutory annual report. And you can present that. We have a resolution that we will be looking at once you've completed that report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my favorite report too. Next slide, please. This report needs a little bit of oops, oh, sorry, I guess there's no slides. Apologies for that. I'm just going to speak to it. Okay. So this report is required by our legislation, which shows our actual results compared to what was in the 2021 year of the 10-year investment plan. So it's very different than the one I just reported on. So changes we've made to our operations as a result of the pandemic has impacted this comparison due to not proceeding with some expansion that was planned in 2020 and 2021, as well as the lower demand in our Handy Dart service. So overall, conventional transit service was down 7.5% from what was in the investment plan, and access transit trips were down 52%. So many projects and initiatives, however, were not impacted, as you can see in the report on what we accomplished. This report also includes a summary of customer complaints, customer satisfaction survey process, amendments to articles of the authority, summary of date, time, and outcome of TransLink's board meetings, the fare collection bylaw, summary of tickets issued and collected, and a summary of the development cost charges. So there is a lot of information in this report, just to remember that it's comparing to the investment plan in the first section. Thank you.
Christine, thank you very much for that. Everybody has a report from Christine and her group, and we also have the actual statutory annual report. This was reviewed quite thoroughly by the Finance and Audit Committee. And are there any questions, any additional questions for Christine on this report? Okay, so seeing none, there is a resolution in our package. It's short, so I'm going to read it. I'm not going to read all the resolutions today, but I will read this one. That we approve the 2021 statutory annual report mandated by the South Coast BC Transportation Authority Act, attached as attachment 1 to the report titled 2021 Statutory Annual Report, dated March the 2nd, 2022, and we authorize the release of the annual report to the Mayor's Council on Regional Transportation. So can I have someone make that motion?
I will, Lorraine.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
I'll second.
And a seconder, Marcella, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So hearing none, that resolution passes unanimously. So thank you for that. Christine, you now move on to item number 15, which is the audited consolidated financial statements.
Yes, as mentioned by Board Director Sarah, presented in your package is the audited financial statements. Management prepares the financial statements and note disclosures using Canadian public sector accounting standards. And our external auditors verified our financial statements, and it was a clean audit.
Anything else to add on that, Christine? No?
No,
all good?
Everything's been in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, would you like to make this motion?
I would. Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you. As chair of the committee, you've done a lot of work on this, so I think it's been well done this year. So a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. You've all got it in your package. Okay, the transit tariff amendment. That is item number 16 on our agenda. Also in our package, there's lots of attachments related to this one. So I'll move it over back to you, Christine.
Thank you. And next slide, please. So this report outlines the transit tariff amendment effective July 1st this year, which is consistent with what was agreed to with the province of BC, where we received 44 million to limit our fare increase to 2.3% through 2024 as part of the emergency relief funding to TransLink. This is lower than what was approved for 2021 in the Phase 2 investment plan. A small exception, which does not impact the overall average of the 2.3%, is for 2 West Coast Express concession products for the 2 and 3 zone stored value rates. This was required to make them equivalent to the 2 and 3 zone conventional rates. Next slide. What this means to some of our products is, depending on which zone is used, cash adult fares will go up 5 to 15 cents. Concession cash will go up 5 to 10 cents. Stored value adult and concession will go up 5 to 10 cents. And monthly pass products for adults will go up $2.30 to $4.15, and concession will go up $1.30. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And I'm sure you're enjoying that drilling that's going on over That's all right. We can hear it just slightly in the background. Okay, so we have a resolution. Any questions on this this item? I know this is a very important issue for us. We have been really trying to keep our fares. We know the cost of living for everyone is going up, but we're also responsible for operating this system and keeping it financially viable. So we are trying to do as little as possible and also take care of our financial affairs. Andy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be supporting this for all of the reasons outlined to assist us in this time to continue our service. But actually, my question is, I wouldn't say trivial, but it's on the actual housekeeping item here on the deletion of Anasa's Island, which I'm confused, and please excuse me if I just haven't read this. When I read through it, it seems fairly straightforward that there's a deletion of the reference of Anasa's Island being included in the definition of Delta, which is fair enough. But in the first appendix that we have, it is clear in the language and in the map on page 26 of that appendix that it is then in zone 3. But when I go to the additional appendix with the black line, there it gets a bit more confusing. On the language, it's deleted, and then there are 4 fare zone maps with 3 different indications of what the fare zone is. So my question is twofold. Are those fare zone maps still relevant? And what happens then for, does this then imply that people traveling from, say, New Westminster or Richmond onto Anasa's now have a fare boundary where they didn't? If you could clarify that for me, I'd be interested in hearing what it is.
Andy, that's a pretty tricky question.
Well,
Christine, are you going to?
I live in New Westminster, and I know people that work on Anasa's Island, so I want to make sure I can.
Kind of half in New Westminster. Is that what you're trying to say? It's half in New Westminster.
No, it's a real issue for people who'll be traveling.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Christine, are you going to be able to deal with this right now, or are you going to need to take it away?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to get back to Andy. Thank you.
Okay.
No problem. No problem.
Okay. So we do have the resolution in front of us, and I think everyone's got it in their package. I can read it to you if you like, but I don't think it's necessary. But we're essentially approving the bylaw amendment to change the fares as per the recommendation that Christine has just gone through for us. So can I have a motion for that, Andy? Or are you asking another question?
Chair, can we pass the fare increase, but can we have clarification on the housekeeping before we approve that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll slightly amend the wording on the resolution. Is that what you're asking to do?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. So Jennifer can fix that wording for us, Jennifer?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair, but could you just identify what that wording change is going to be?
Jennifer?
Andy, if you're the one, if you could just be a little bit more specific on
that. The intent of the change is to just not implement the housekeeping until we have further explanation. This should not impact the fare increase resolution that we're talking about for July 1st.
Actually, I can, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If I can provide a response to Andy on his question, and that might
help
with this.
Okay, that might help, and then we won't have to
yeah.
do the amended resolution potentially.
So I think the track changes on the black line looks funny. It's the clean copy that is accurate, and it's just to align the map with how the Compass system charges. So if you look at the revised one, it just looks funny on the track changes when we change the map.
Okay, so just
Does
so
that
we're
help?
clear then, so Richmond and New Westminster traveling to Annacis Island is now a 2-zone fare?
That's really the essence of your question, correct, Andy?
Yes.
Yeah. And was it a 1-zone fare before, not living in New Westminster? I don't know this.
Well, there's conflicting in the information we provided. It gives 3 different possibilities. There's one where it's a 2-3 shared zone. There's one where it's only a 3 zone, and there's one which is a colored map, which is colored for both zones in different areas. So I wasn't clear on what the outcome is.
So you're not sure what the existing structure is.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the color of the map. Sorry.
Yeah.
I will have to get back to you.
So Jennifer, back to you then. We will need the slight amendment to the resolution.
Yes, Chair, that's fine. So the amendment would read that the board is approving the fare increases that are proposed in the bylaw, and management, this won't be in the resolution, but management will need to come back for further approval on the map.
Okay. So Andy, were you making that resolution?
I will.
Are you moving it? Okay. And do I have a seconder for that? Marcella, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? And sorry, I just saw your hand up, Jen. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I wondered if we could actually just resolve the housekeeping matter. And I wondered if pointing to attachment 2, which is the black line, that might clarify a little bit. If we look to comparing the clean and the black line, we see that the clean for the new amended version shows us that Annacis Island would now be part of Zone 3. And I wonder if part of the confusion is because the 2 maps with regard to the West Coast Express compared to the transit show the split of Annacis Island formerly into Zone 2 and 3. And where it's clearest shown how the change occurs is on attachment 2. It looks like page 31. And you can see that before it used to be Annacis Island split into Zone 2 and 3, which is, I wonder if that's the source of the confusion. Andy, does that help at all? So that now Annacis Island would all be in Zone 3, if staff can confirm that that's correct. That was my reading of it from the black lines. Just rather than have to come back to the board again.
Well, there's actually two parts to it. If it clarifies it's all in Zone 3, that is the answer to one question. Then the question is there a dual zone fare then from the previous zone that is a change from what it currently is as a combined zone?
That's really what you're looking for. Is it different from what it currently is?
Yes.
Yeah, there is no difference. So there is no change in that. So it hasn't moved, but I'm just trying to confirm.
I think we need cleared up there in the second attachment. There are 3 different fare zone maps for the same area. I don't want to approve this until we have that clarified. So I don't think it is as simple as that.
Chair, could I propose that maybe we move on to the next item and hopefully we can come back to
get it resolved. Okay, why don't we do that? Because we are halfway through the motion there. So, okay, let's move on to the property tax. Management will go away and take care. Of course, Christine has to do this next one as well. So Christine, on to item number 17 on the agenda, which is the property tax bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So the allowable property tax per our legislation and as approved by the Mayor's Council in the 10-year investment plan is shown here. It includes a 3% annual increase and a 1.5% increase from the development growth rate in our region. The replacement tax remains unchanged at 18 million. Next slide. Due to the increase in completed roll assessments, the actual rates charged to property owners have decreased over the previous year. The rates shown here are for residential class per 1,000 and are down 12.6%. For the combined property tax and replacement tax, the change in average assessments for residential is 3% or $8. The 2022 average assessment value for residential property is 1.37 million. So that helps put it into context. And last year's average assessment was 1.17 million. For business and other property class, the average increase is also 3%, which works out to an average of $108. And the report has all of the other classes listed as well. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. So any questions in regards to the property tax and replacement tax bylaws that we're being asked to move on? Harpinder.
Thank you, Lorraine. Yeah, my question was more of a historical context. Over the past maybe, I guess, decade, have we historically seen the rate change, fluctuate quite a bit? Of course, assessments change over year, but have they stayed consistent, or do they, fluctuate based on the assessment numbers that we get typically? How do we react to the, I guess, changing market environment?
Yeah, it does fluctuate. Last year, the rate was a slight increase. So it changes based on both the value and the number of properties as well. So it does fluctuate year over year as to how that rate changes.
Okay. And is this fluctuation higher than the norm, or is it within? I know there are big changes in property values, but are we within certain margins that we typically see historically?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge shift, but like I say, some years the rate is higher, and some years it's less. So I don't have the history of how that's changed. I think this is probably would be a bit higher than the norm, and that it's come down, that the rates come down as well. But it does fluctuate. So I don't know that there is really a normal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Harpinder. Okay, so we have the resolution in your package in the document, the overview document, not in the attachments. It's quite lengthy. I won't read it, but there's a property tax bylaw component and a replacement tax bylaw component. So is somebody willing to make the motion to move that? Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. And a seconder? I can't see everybody, so you're going to have to speak up because I only see us. Thank you very much, Harj. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, are we ready to go back, or do you want me to do the consent agenda and then we'll come back, Jennifer? Or Christine, are you ready to finish up on that housekeeping item, or should I?
Why don't we just do the consent agenda,
all right,
Chair, and then we can come back.
Okay, so we have the consent agenda in front of us. As a reminder, the consent agenda is a combination of approvals, decision by consent. The intention is that these items stay in consent and don't turn into large discussions. However, anybody is welcome to ask a question, but the idea is that they stay in consent. So unless there's anybody that would like to specifically ask a question about one of the items, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Harj. And a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. I think that was your voice. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 And any opposed? Thank you. So that has passed unanimously. Okay, so your time is running out because we're going to include this.
I have an answer.
Okay, back to Christine.
Okay, so it's actually simpler than I probably thought. It was more complicated. So previously, Annis's Island was a 2 and 3 common zone when bus services had zones. Okay, but now bus service is all one zone. So it's just administratively to reflect it. So it's a zone, the change is it will be a zone 3, but it's administrative because it's all one zone in buses.
That's a very simple answer and one we all should have thought of because we all know the answer to this. Okay, so I think we had a mover and a seconder, and I think I was just calling for the vote on this. So all in favor of the resolution in regards to the fare adjustment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. So thank you all very much. So then that brings us to the conclusion of the this meeting. And so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Seconded.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So thank you all very much for those that are on live streaming with us today. We appreciate the time that you take to be interested in TransLink, and we will adjourn our meeting now. So thank you.